Great. I'd like to call the September 21st Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I believe all trustees are present. Is that correct, George?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. So we have basically 4 items tonight. We'll start with the Lamar Park District and the MWRD intergovernment agreement. George, are you taking the lead on that?
I'll kick start it here, and we don't have to go through this again, but there will be an opportunity for public comment if anybody's on the line here for an item other than what's on the agenda. We'll have time at the end of the meeting for our typical public comment session. We did not receive any public comments via email or phone or dropped off at Village Hall, so we will have that opportunity if anyone still wishes to participate. Like you said, just 3 or 4 items on the agenda, so we'll take them in order, but I will kick start it here. First item 3A, is the discussion of a co-lease arrangement with the Village of Lamont and the Park District with the MWRD. So the Village and the Park would be co-leasees, and we'd be leasing property from the district, from MWRD, for main channel parcel 23.04. Which is commonly known as TriCentral. And we'll also talk a little bit about the intergovernmental agreement, draft agreement with the Park District to outline responsibilities going forward. I'll give a brief background. We've talked about this a numerous times, but I will kind of discuss where we've been and where we're going with this agreement. And I'll go through the lease, just the high level items in the lease that are little bit different than what MWRD typically allows that we were able to negotiate, but I'll go through that here today along with the IGA. The Village has had a long history, as we've talked about, partnering with the MWRD on leasing their property along the channel. Village has, just one example, has a lease for about 100 acres of property east of the downtown in the Heritage Quarry Recreation Area for several years. And then we co-lease the Safety Village property with the Park District from MWRD as well. So definitely not out of the ordinary for the Village to engage in lease activities with the district. Typically, what's advantageous from the district is that if you meet all the requirements and regulations, you can have the property essentially for $0 a year. You have to hold insurance on it, make improvements over time, over a phased-in model typically, but you do not have any land costs for the overall lease. To bring up TriCentral, it's been on the Village's radar since going back to 1999 when the old TriCentral Terminal was decommissioned. So it's definitely been on the radar for several or a couple decades at least to lease this property, and for a number of reasons that we talked about, to have this amount of property at the foot of our downtown for potential recreational or other uses for really a nominal fee is really advantageous and really difficult to come by. So the Village has always kept an eye on it, actually participated with the state of Illinois on a brownfield grant to study it back in the 90s and the 2000s. During the 2005 4 or 5 downtown study, it was actually discussed, if you remember, with Marquette, potentially becoming a residential site. Unfortunately, it's more than likely will always be a recreational site to some extent, or even industrial if the Village doesn't secure the lease, typically because the MWD doesn't give out longer term leases than 50 years anymore. So you would need at least a 99-year lease in order to do residential, as we were finding out over the last decade or so. So here's just a property. You always kind of envision the site coming from, at least I do, looking north, but coming south over the bridge, you do get the scale of the site in relation to the downtown, and it's really a great opportunity for the Village and the Park District. In this park, that you can see how it fits in with what other recreational amenities the Village has, to offer in the downtown in relation to our trails, in relation to the forge that just recently opened, the Heritage Quarry Recreation Area. Really a good opportunity to secure this property, and also, to ensure that it doesn't come back to an industrial use as it was before. So definitely a great opportunity for the Village and the Park District. For the last 4 or 5 years, last 3 years, I should say, we've entertained a partnership with the Park District to lease the property. Securing this site for them also aligns with their interests. They've wanted a greater presence in the downtown. They've recently surveyed their residents and our residents on the need for a downtown park. So they're definitely interested, and it's been a good partnership with the Safety Village so far. We could share resources. We could apply for grants together. So definitely a good opportunity for us to work together with the Park District. I am going to switch screens real quick and go to the lease and go over some terms, and then I will come back to the PowerPoint. Hold on just a second. There we go. So just a brief history again. Back in 2019, the mayor, myself, Park District officials, Jason Berry, we attended a couple meetings with the district to start talking about the site downtown with MWRD, I should say, multiple districts here. But so just to start talking about the site and what could be done on the TriCentral site and how a lease would come about. But back in May was the first kind of formal request to lease the site. And this is all by direction from the MWRD and what we had to do to move forward. Really let the Park District take the lead on administering this part of it. We've been having meetings along the way ever since COVID. They've all been through video conference, but we've been downtown multiple times. And I got to say, working with MWRD, they're outstanding partners. They've been really helpful, and it aligns with a lot of things they want to do too. So definitely looking forward to the partnership. But the first formal notification was the intent to lease the site, and putting into the formal letter. This is administrative at the time for myself and the Park District Executive Director. Just some terms that we would like included in the lease. Again, their leases are pretty standard. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. They're essentially, if they're going to lease property for next to nothing per year, you take their terms, and they have other reasons for it. They have statutory reasons why they have to require certain terms, but we were able to include terms, and I'll go through that here as well into the overall lease. This was the initial site layout. It showed a phasing plan over 30 years of how the site would be planned. And this has changed since the initial request, so I'll go through that later on. And this is a pretty standard lease, but I will go through a couple of key items that are of note. Hold on just a second. One of them is a 50-year term. That's the max that MWRD will lease property. They offered it to us for 20, 39, or 50. Because by the end of the lease, you're required to bring it to standards and to TACO 1 residential standards, and you're supposed to comply with everything in your lease agreement by the end of the term. We thought longer term, the better. And obviously 50 years is the max they allowed. So we went with the 50 years to lease the property. And obviously we've seen this in our other sites. If, our other sites that come available, typically you're just renewed after the fact. Rent and consideration, another key point. One provision that they put in all their leases is that if and when an entity were to start making money on the site, start charging for events, food and beverage, activities, that you're required to share that revenue with the district, with MWRD, by a certain percentage, typically 25% of all revenues. It's pretty standard. They also have golf courses and other areas where of Chicagoland where they partner with towns and villages. One item we were able to get into the contract or the lease is to allow the village and the Park District to recoup any costs that we put into the site before we start sharing. So that was definitely helpful for the district to help us out with that provision. And again, long term, you're looking at potential revenues from food and beverage if you had larger events or any type of entrance, activity fees, but at least we're able to recoup those costs. The only other one I will say, I will go to page 24. Hold on a second.
George, what's the lease fee?
So it'd be $0 or $10 per year. Yeah.
Okay.
Couple other provisions I'm going to pull up. Hold on just a second. I will make mention their insurance provisions real quick. That's also a requirement of the lease is that the entities hold insurance. The way we did it with the safety village, I think it worked out so far. Both entities, the park and the village, are both required to provide insurance, the general liability, property. We could provide that free of charge from our risk pool, as can the park district. A rather new requirement, they also require a pollution insurance rider that our risk coverage does not provide, our risk pool, but the park district's provision or program does provide it. So with the safety village, I should say, MWRD has allowed only one entity to provide that coverage. It's an expensive coverage over and above, and our risk pool does not carry it. So we'll try that again, where we both have to cover general, but the park district will cover the additional environmental insurance.
George, can you explain what that environmental insurance is? What it's actually, I don't understand what it's covering.
I'm not sure I could tell you. It's that all of their leases, whether they lease it to industrial users, recreational users, if you, by your activities, you create environmental damage, again, ours is recreational, so it'd be pretty hard for us. In the past, they've allowed municipalities who are using sites only for recreation to bypass that coverage. For industrial, users, I think it makes sense. For us, it doesn't, but it's an extra policy one of us has to procure.
So can the land get any more polluted than it already is?
Yeah, I don't, you never know, but I don't think so. But no, they've even, it's funny, they even, since our renewals, or we've had the quarry area under lease for several years, and now they're coming around and asking for this insurance from us. Little over the top, but again, they're good partners, and they charge everybody the same insurance, so they have a hard time excluding everybody. So don't pollute in the quarry area, Dave.
Yeah, it just seems like the services that we said we'll offer, none of them have the ability to do that. So
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Let's see, last one would be page 24. Just want to call your attention to stormwater management requirements. This is all being done, and I'll go through the IGA by the park district. They're providing for, not only are we leasing MWRD property, MWRD is the regulatory agency on all stormwater. So you do have to provide a stormwater management plan as part of the lease, but the park district's doing that on behalf of the village and the park. And then the overall mitigation plan or environmental remediation plan has to be provided within 120 days of execution of the lease. And then that gets attached to this document as an exhibit. Early conversations with the park district and MWRD have been really favorable about mitigation strategies of moving materials over to the far west end, capping it. Again, we're not talking about a whole lot of material. It's pretty close to bedrock out there, but not requiring haul off of material, just within their standards and EPA standards, moving it over to the west end and capping it. And in one day, if they're, over the village and the park will not be programming all 27 acres in the near future, unless there's a big sum of money that becomes available. So that strategy should work over time. That's also in the lease, and that will have to be formalized in the lease document within 121 days of approval. This is a lot of their standard litigation. There are no improvements on the site currently. And you'll see this was pretty much the same document as what we approved for the safety village site as well. Just going to get to the next page. Hold on a second. So you can see where we are currently, and the district, I might have bypassed it, approved it at their July 16th board meeting, MWRD, I should say, and the Park District and the village were on that call. We heard their board meeting. What they do is a two-step process that really the board approves the ability for the village and the Park District to enter in this lease, and then the staff, MWRD, and legal executes the lease with the village and the Park District. So this will not go back in front of the MWRD Village Board or Board of Commissioners, I should say. They've given that authority to their staff to execute this lease. So once executed by the village and the Park District, we will sign, execute, insert all exhibits, and it will be an active lease with the MWRD. Included with those exhibits that are required, plat of survey. Again, the Park District was able to procure this plat of survey. Russell Schomig, one of our better surveyors in town. Exhibit of the Channel Atlas parcel. Exhibit C, where will be the long-term site remediation plan, will be inserted, as well as the approved GI plan. This is standard as well, and there's probably some sections in the lease that I may have skipped over. Standard in all of our leases. Safety Village, we're required to do it, as well as the quarry area. Based on land acreage, you're required to install a certain amount of green infrastructure on the site or adjacent to the site. So this plan will have to be approved as well. More than likely, a site like this being programmed would include green infrastructure anyway, but it's just part of the lease that you have to include your intentions, and that'll be included as part of the final lease too. Again, introduction of bioswales, other green features on the site that also help out with the stormwater. Exhibit E is a district's waterway strategy. Again, being right on the sanitary ship canal, you have to be a certain distance away. All this is approved by MWRD attorneys, and how can you ensure proper protection from the canal walls. So that takes us to, and this will not be, this may be in the lease, but probably more pertinent to our intergovernmental agreement, is how do we get there? We have 27 acres. There's there will not be a land cost component to this project. It'll be $0 per year. There will be costs associated with cleanup and programming, green infrastructure. So how does the village and the Park District ensure that, we're moving forward? Again, we have time. This could be a long-term phased-in plan, but the district wants to see, what is your overall plan over a 30-year period, as we've included in the lease. And this is an updated exhibit that we're sharing with the district. The Park District has shared this with their village board. This will go into our IGA and the lease agreement. Again, you're looking at phase 0 would be essentially all remediation efforts. As I mentioned, the approved remediation plan will include provision to move materials to the west end and cap. But how much of the site will be remediated or will be programmed, I should say, to start. And this is where that phase 0 is, within 0 to 5 years, giving the village and the park a good amount of leeway there based on funding and other provisions over a 5-year period. But you can see phase 0 would include the remediation, green infrastructure improvements, and also potentially a parking lot, play structure, and a passive pathway system that would only include a small portion to start. Phase 1 would include a parking lot. Phase 2 would include more of the athletic fields and turf. And then phase 3 is when additional programming, additional trails throughout the entire site. So definitely a phased in plan. I think it's important too. The reason why this exhibit has changed, from when we looked at it, I think back in July, we met as the board, the park board, the village board, is that we think based on initial conversations with the Coast Guard, we are also programming or engineering, I should say, a pedestrian bike bridge over the sanitary ship canal uh, that will land right at the footing of this project. And we thought originally, based on the height, we'd have to use this portion right here for as part of the overall bridge, but we think that'll be reclaimed to include parking, maybe a playground structure, but be able to be programmed, not being lost due to the bridge. Still need to get some final correspondence from the Coast Guard on that, but we think the bridge could be lower, which obviously makes it more feasible as a project. So I'll go through the IGA in a little bit, but any questions on the new, concept?
George, this is Ron. I have a question.
Yeah.
The question is, can we build structures there? I mean, like restrooms, maybe a small field house?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ron. And I think, they will be minor structures if there are structures. We are allowed to build structures, but I think the intent of this project, as we've talked, is to be more, flat space. But yeah, bathrooms, that's part of the phasing plan as well. Is bathrooms, maybe potentially a band shell one day. That's where, the park district, the village, we need what type of, as we get into the actual detail of what's going to be programmed, how does the community feel about what should be out here? Do we need another spot for a band shell? Do we need, those type of questions will come out later. But we are allowed to build structures, but the intent, they're going to be ancillary structures to the flat space.
Thank you.
George, this is Dave. Is the road included in this lease, or what's the status of the road?
Yeah, good question. On the so that was a question why we needed to get it surveyed. Believe it or not, I was kind of surprised that MWRD doesn't have surveys for all their properties. We had to go, when you lease their property, you have to survey it. So it makes sense. But we did determine that the road is on the leasehold. So what that means is, we deal with this across the canal with the users along the sanitary ship north side, I should say, where the road is essentially our responsibility. But if there's other users that use the road, we share in those costs. But we'll get into the road a little bit more during the discussion with the IGA, but it is on the site. To answer your question.
Okay.
So with that, maybe I'll go back to that exhibit afterward, but I did want to talk a little bit about the IGA, and the IGA is not required for MWRD. They just, would like to see obviously a signed and executed lease with MWRD. How things work out between the park and the village is really not, as important to them, because once we're co-leasees, we have equal liability, equal rights, equal, just about everything to the lease. But I think it'd be a good idea to put something in writing with the park district. This could come, at the same meeting that we're approving the lease or later. One thing I wanted to, in working with the park, is just to show that while the park is taking the heavy lifting of design, engineering, permitting, we'll have to, remediation, the athletic fields. We're not in the park business. That's obviously a park function. We definitely wanted to contribute our share to the project to also ensure that it gets off the ground. So we did come up with ways where the village can contribute, either leverage our opportunities to procure grants or do things that we do well. So I'll go through that as well. The pre-lease activities, I thought it was important to get this in here too, to kind of just clearly identify what everyone is doing. Insurance procurement, that would be park district and the village. I mentioned that earlier. Design, permitting, stormwater will be on the park district. Obviously, we're working in concert to one another. But that would be them engaging their consultant and them issuing, the main formal kind of permittee on the project will be along for the conversations. But I also wanted to include phase one engineering of the sanitary ship and canal bridge. I think that's important. I see those projects, while they are separate, they do work very well together, especially with parking provisions and creating a trailhead. To include that, we are working on phase one engineering of our ped bridge. Phase zero, as we talked about before, we got to update the years a little bit with the updated exhibit, but we received a grant last year from the state to finish up Stevens Street. If you recall, 2 years ago, we received a grant for resurfacing Stevens Street. We took that all the way to River Road. We received another grant through the state capital bill from Senator Kern's office. We appreciate that support for additional funding, and we thought it'd be good to throw at this project to give it some momentum. We're going to need to run utilities down there anyway. Water main currently, functional water main, I should say, ends at River. So we would run the water main from River down to TriCentral for eventual hookup for bathrooms, water fountains. Phase one site engineering would be on the Park District. BNSF bridge overpass stone repair. Again, that's our right of way. We thought, and a lot of it's aesthetic, and that is on the village, not on the railroad, as we've found out. We'll no urgent rush on that part of it, but just to fix up the stone that's crumbling underneath the bridge. Green infrastructure. This is the big item in association with this lease is the remediation, which includes green infrastructure, the waterway components, and moving dirt over, but probably more costly is bringing fill in than the environmental cleanup, because the site's got to be built back up. We also, right before the state passed their budget last year, Senator Kern's office reached out to the village and see if it had a really good project for a grant opportunity. That got written into the budget, and so we feel that this is a good opportunity again to kickstart the remediation, and the LPD would be on the hook for the remainder. And talking to the park, I mean, they have, I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but they have reserves, and this is definitely a priority project for them. So they would kick in the remainder. And then the roadway improvements, again, focus on what everyone does well. I talked to, Ralph, and the road's not in terrible shape. It probably needs some grindings, but it's something we could definitely do. We don't want to make it look too pretty too early, because there's going to be a lot of trucks going over it. So that's something I thought we could take care of. And then future phases.
Real quick, that's the existing road that Dave was referring to, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So this is not nothing new, no new parking lot.
No, not in phase zero. No, the road, there is a user to the west of this site that may be using the road. So it's something we have to reach out and see if we can get contribution from. But I think that user, it's ACBL. I don't think they use the road. I think they just use the waterway. But it is something we can get contributions on. So that's the existing road. And then probably, during early, if no one else is using it west of us, during the early phases, we probably don't need to fix up the entire road. I mean, we could just fix up what we need. Those are the details we have to work out. Phase one, as we move forward, this is where you start getting into programming.
Hey, George.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. For the pre, I didn't know where I should interrupt, but since John did, I'm going to pile on. Our engineering project is for more than just that bridge. It's also for parking, I thought.
Yeah, and that's where I always thought, and maybe I'll get Jason in here if I'm not sure if it included parking. Is that Jason? Are you?
Hi guys.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah, no, it included parking on the north side of the canal. The idea was to create like a
Oh, just the north side.
there.
Okay.
And working with Dozinga, as well as potentially a boat launch too. All that's still part of that project.
That was north side then. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, those are some things too. I mean, what the parking lot turns into, the exhibit showed it as a, a massive, 200 car parking lot. And it could end up being, similar to what the Forge has on the north side, grindings or whatever material. I'm sure Rick will, it could end up being, it doesn't have to be all pavers. I mean, that's something that still needs to be kind of worked out. I always thought it, if we got the sanitary ship bridge, that you'd also want parking on the south side, so the village could work on the parking lot area. A lot of details to work out though. I don't know what that parking lot entails yet, has not been engineered, or it could just be something like grindings to start. So, but definitely we could talk about that down the line.
Any of those things will work on top of bedrock.
There you go.
And as far as that road goes, George, there either are users who need it now, which means that they are passing through there as it exists, which is, we're worried about it being in poor condition, but they're not doing anything about it. Those private properties are responsible, at least were responsible to maintain those roads individually or as a group on each of their properties. MWRD does not maintain that roadway. The leaseholders do.
Yep. True. Yeah.
Did. I don't know if it's changed, but that's what it used to.
No, you're right. And that's what MWRD told us, because even on the north side, we had questions about, who's fixing the road, and no, they all chip in. I just don't think, and maybe Jason, do you know, is ACBL, are they using the road at all? Or anybody? Ralph, I haven't
For
seen
that far slip for,
just west of TriCentral. Are they using that road at all?
no, I don't think so.
But
So I mean, basically where I'm getting at is if the intent over the development of this is to bring in materials with trucks, then it's got to be passable for those trucks, and that in itself should make it good enough for a pickup truck to drive over there also.
Yep.
It's not like you're coming in with some special equipment to drive down the road.
correct. Getting into the phase one, probably the sanitary ship bridge could be potentially even into phase two, but wanted to put it in there from a 2 to 5. Obviously, we all have to keep vigilant on securing grants, and we don't have a final number for that bridge, but when we do, we'll put that in we'll consider that as a contribution to the project. At that point,
I do have one question in the ad, George, or just maybe to a target to add, just in case. And Jason would be the one who would know this. As we get into this agreement with the park, does that bring about different types of grants available to us then, because it becomes a park property? Those were quotes. You can see both my fingers there, but it's a park type property. So then do they qualify for different grants? You got the bike path situation there with the bridge for the bikes. So there may be many more opportunities as we redefine this property from industrial commercial use to park and recreational use.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
We're working with the park district, right? They have a potential grant opportunity for downtown. There's certainly opportunities that they could apply for that we don't get to, so.
yep. But this is where you'd also see the installation, Ron, of the restrooms, drinking fountains, as well as green infrastructure components. One thing that was new to me, maybe I didn't pay attention before, but the park is, for this site, considering putting a play piece in. So that would be interesting, especially as you start to, fix the infrastructure leading up to TriCentral. It won't be as disconnected as it looks now. I mean, it's pretty close. It's just, it obviously looks pretty barren right now. But definitely could be a great, bookmark to the downtown. Phase two, again, additional additional walking paths, and then more fields. And then 3 would be finishing up the whole site, and again, this moves up or down based on funding. Then I'll open it up couple quick items that came up during construction, obligations, concern is right now before it becomes programmed or even afterward is just security. So I talked to the chief today a little bit about it and, working with we're putting out an RFQ for our camera system. Technology is getting pretty good now. Do we put cameras down there? That's just something to think about down the line for during construction, but also afterward. There's no lights planned for the area. There is electric back there, so it comes down to funding. If this area becomes used a whole lot, we could put lights up. But again, that's for the future. I will go anything else on the lease or the IGA, and I'll go back and I'll finish up on the couple more.
Hey, yeah, I have one other question for the clean remediation phase.
Yep.
Can you go back to the wording on that one? Who's responsible for project management of it?
That would be the park district. Maybe I need to put that in there.
Yeah, I would just kind of spell it out just because it's one where we're both providing funds.
Yep.
So.
Yep, good idea.
That was it. Thanks.
I got a very old story I'll bring up as it relates to lighting. It might be worth, you got to think way out of the box and down line, but as lighting is replaced on other projects by the state, by other villages, by the parks, by the park district themselves, sometimes you find uses for those older lights and standards, at least in the short term. Years ago, Lamar High School, that's how they got their lights for their first football field. They were lights that were donated to them from some other facility. And so they ended up then getting poles that were taller from Edison, and that's how it got rolling. So I'm just pointing out that there may be other things that, as this thing moves forward, that we talk about and reach out to other agencies for. The tollway, for example, sometimes when they change the light standards, they have to change the poles and so on and so forth. So.
Good point, Rick. Thank you. The other thing I'll mention quickly, while the park will be, overseeing the remediation, we have a component in there we're gonna help fund. But one thing they are gonna reach out to us, and I think we can work. It's probably a special meeting in and of itself. Is the majority of the costs are new clean fill, and how do we build the site back up? Working with our partners that if you can barge the materials in versus truck, it's cheaper. Can we work with Ozinga? Those are things that we all gotta. That's where the park district's gonna rely on us too in our connections. And how do we get this done least expensive as possible? Get creative.
George, don't forget the tollway's dirt up on the west side of the tollway at 127th Street. They control that dirt. That land is useless with it there, and there's more there than would be needed for a berm.
Okay, yeah, that's good. If anyone can find dirt, let us know.
George, I
see Phil there.
I heard there's a pile of dirt by the police station too, George.
Anyone, I'll pay someone to take that. All right. Anything else on the lease or IGA? I'm going to go back real quick to hopefully that works. The park district, again, it's tough to visualize how the site can look over time, without putting some resources to it. So the park was able to do it. Here's, how phase 1 could really play out. You can see the Lamont Road Bridge, could be over the parking lot area. And then here's kind of, the passive park pathway system for phase 0 and 1, just using some of the site. Then over time, you go further west, and there's room for a play piece. You can picture our bridge. You can vision our bridge just east of here. If we can get that height requirement figured out, we potentially could just come right down on our own right away and not have to wind and use this space at all. So definitely good to see some pretty pictures, and then even the entranceway. Again, a lot of work needs to happen, but go down there now and look at this area. It's all fenced off and overgrown trees, and it could look something like something special. Anything else on the lease IGA or anything related to TriCentral?
Actually, George, the last question is, Park District is once this park gets developed, is the Park District maintaining it? I didn't notice that on there. So, the general cutting and the upkeep and general repairs.
I think that'll be clarified in there. It's a good point. Yeah, they'll be maintaining it. Where we'll step in is plowing, maintenance of the roadway, the entrance, which will essentially be Stephen Street. But yeah, we'll make that clear. I think the park, again, they're in the park business, so they should maintain it. We'll do what we can on the infrastructure.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, George, outside of the minor points that were brought up, anything else, any other feedback you need from us on this? Sounds like you're just looking, hey, is this good to go from the trustee standpoint?
Yeah, and the MWRD, they've been pushing, for us to approve it. I think the park board will act on it Wednesday, the lease, I should say, and maybe the IGA. Is everyone comfortable? We'll have really the park took the lead on the lease, and their attorney really dug through it. I'll have Mike look at it prior to the next board meeting, but is everyone good executing the lease so we could get started? And the second question, I guess, would be I'll clean up the items with putting more information on, remediation oversight, and then also maintenance responsibilities, and then is the IGA, acceptable to move forward?
Once again, George, are we entering the lease together with MWRD or individually?
Together.
Okay. And then we're going to have an IGA with the Park District in addition to the lease. Correct. With MWRD.
Yep.
Okay. So there's actually two
items.
We could agree with getting the lease done, and then we could still finish up on the IGA, but it doesn't sound like there's been any real heartburn over anything here.
Nope.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
All right.
So if anyone else doesn't have any questions or issues for George finalizing the MWRD as well as the IGA, I mean, if you do have an issue, bring it up now. Otherwise, George, go ahead and continue to work on that. I think, as we all mentioned before, you can't beat 20 plus acres for $10. So, yeah, we'll definitely take that over industrial. So, anyone else have any questions or comments?
No, none for me.
The only other thing before I go on to the next one, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to share something else from the park. Reached out to the village about a month ago. They're applying for a grant and needed our support. And I'll go through just real quick. If you go back to, again, one of these old plans that we like to run with every now and then, this is the 2005 master plan. And you can see, here's the Lamont Road Bridge, this outline right here. And key component even back in 05, but it's becoming more popular now, is use of, this dead space underneath a bridge. The village owns the reserve strip in this area. So really right now it's essentially dead space. Can't build any structures, obviously, or sell it. But if you look at even in 05, they envisioned maybe a park underneath the bridge. Good use of that dead space. And they applied for a grant real quick, actually received it, and pretty cool they could actually bring one of these active lifestyle kind of outdoor gyms and potentially put it under our bridge. The village would, have to allow it, obviously. We could, partner by, we talked about pouring a foundation or a concrete slab, I should say. But really an opportunity to kind of bring more parks to the downtown. Just wanted to share this with everybody, see if anybody had any thoughts. They haven't really obligated anything yet, but they did get the grant, that will be partially funding this project. We did check, we do own, there's parts of under the bridge where we don't own, but this section we do. We have a lease to IDOT. We own this property. So I don't get any thoughts you guys had. Kind of threw together somewhat quickly and got the grant, and could be something really positive. Yeah, Rick?
Yeah, I would suggest that this is something that we should take to the downtown committee or to the business committee down there to make sure that we don't assume that everybody's on board or everything. We actually get their support rather than not, and then find out after the fact that we got a problem. So you'd want it to meld in with everybody's support down there. Although things keep going the way they are, we'll be figuring out how much support we need.
No, it's good. It's a good point. I think we can take it to the next DFG and even the Heritage meeting or the quarry area group, to see. I mean, it's really another one of these things where they don't have to purchase land. We have it. Is this a good spot for it? But they'll have to fund. It's a partial grant, but the park district's really excited about it, and they wanted me to share it with you guys to get your thoughts.
George, did they have to submit a location when they applied for that grant?
Yes, this is what they submitted.
Oh, okay. And then I guess, I don't have an issue with it. I'm gonna more legalities now, like maintenance and all that stuff. So
Yep.
is this another intergovernmental agreement if we did this, or?
Yeah, it would be. Would there be an IGA for maintenance and hold harmless? And we took it took a few weeks for us just to even ensure that we own the property. There is sections that we don't own, but we did a quick title search, and we do have the ability now. So.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, before they did anything, I would want the IGA in there, just because I'd hate for our staff to get stuck dealing with maintenance of parks.
Yeah, or not
So-
be allowed to build it. You're right. Yep.
So
George, this is Ron. I have a question. You mentioned that we own it, and you also mentioned that we lease it. So
We have in other sections the IDOT has a air right lease, for the bridge, but through title we own the property.
okay,
There's other parts of it where actually where the metro parking is now, that IDOT actually owns that, and we lease it from IDOT.
okay, thank you.
Clear as mud.
All right, George, anything else on,
Nope, that's all I have on that one.
all right. All right, continuing on, what's up next? Seasonal events?
Yeah, and this is really kind of a broad topic. Obviously, I just wanted to kind of maybe brainstorm with the board, and we had a couple ideas. These two items are somewhat related, but I'll take them separately. Obviously, with COVID, we've had to cancel a lot of our events. I mean, Heritage Fest, Quarryman got canceled twice. There's been a couple other events that have been canceled. As we head into fall and winter, we'd like to find ways to kind of bring our events back, especially Halloween and Christmas time. So I'm gonna turn that over to Linda here in a second here with a couple options to run by everybody. But the second part of that would be, when we're fortunate not to have many businesses go out of business during COVID. I think other towns had that situation. We've had a couple. The way we treated it early on was to be, really super flexible with, moving into our right of ways, and I'm talking more so about the outdoor dining and even allowing improvements to occur on our property. As we move forward, what other opportunities do we want to? We've been approached by businesses to do more of it. Again, everyone's gearing up for the winter time. Where can they put their igloos or their tents? Or so I just wanted to kind of use tonight, since we kind of have a short agenda, to brainstorm. But hey, Linda, if you're there, you want to kickstart it, just talk briefly about Halloween and maybe give an update of what's happening with our Christmas event series.
So right now, I wanted to talk about Lemonster Days. We met with our community calendar committee. We go through that every year for the month of who's doing what. And we've been kind of going back and forth with Halloween Hoedown. And at this point right now, we had in the past, it started on Main Street with a costume contest and then a parade through the downtown. And the businesses would hand out candy, and then they'd go to the safety village and they would get more candy. And we had the haunted quarry wagon rides and bouncies and other things. Of course, we can't do those things this year. But Jason did poll our downtown businesses, and many of them responded that they are still willing to hand out candy. And again, this event would be on October 24th. And we could, the time is up in the air right now. So I guess right now we wanted to kind of get your input on, we wouldn't be having those timed activities and having, specific events where they're going to be congested in one area. So it would be spread out. We'd still maybe have to close down the streets. That's all that needs to be decided. But in general, if we can get some input from you on, do you think with COVID, do we want to have Halloween Hoedown still? We think with this time spread out, that the kids could still, the whole point of having these events is bringing people downtown and, for the businesses and having them be downtown. That's always been the objective of all our events. So, do we take that away and then, they lose that? And if the businesses want to, they can do special, drinks, special food, special appetizers, theme related. So that's kind of where we're at, keeping it low key, but still definitely not having it advertised. I mean, that brings in probably over 1,000 kids. So we would definitely not advertise it. It'd be basically be for Lamont residents. So, we're working with, that includes taxing bodies, the chamber, our historical society and park district. And, we get their input on all of these. So does anyone have any input?
Just first question, I'm not saying this should dictate it at all, because I still think, I like the idea of doing it in some shape or form. I'm just, way over my skis on figuring out what is, kosher with COVID. But what's the state's direction on just Halloween trick or treating in general? Is there, Chief, I don't know if you've heard anything, or George?
No, there hasn't been any clear guidance. One thing I did talk to Mike Stillman. What he's recommending for his clients is for Halloween. I think it is anyway, but keep it a family by family choice. If you want to participate and hand out candy, put something in your window perhaps. But it's really a family by family choice, and maybe we spread the hours out a little bit more. But that's one thing that we got from Mike.
So there's no mandate that
Nope.
towns cannot have trick or treating, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So I think maybe what we talk about in this, Linda, as well, is everyone cool with having trick or treating with some sort of, COVID, particulars to it?
So it's trick or treating that I see that as a pretty easy thing, honestly. That's a lot of communication. We could have a sign made, put it on your door if you're allowing trick or treaters. Don't touch your candy bag, open it up, pour it into a, tub and use tongs or something to hand your candy out. Wear a mask, social distancing and all that good stuff needs to apply. But there's a lot of town, Romeoville's having it. Homer, I think, is having it, Lockport. So the towns around us are right now already advertising that they're having it, promoting that they're having trick or treat.
Okay, so is anyone against trick or treating? My point is if we're having trick or treating, why not do the same type of thing downtown with the same type of, precautions for COVID?
I have a couple questions. I'm not necessarily opposed, but I do have a couple questions. Is there a a liability that we take on by giving direction on how to do trick or treating. So,
Stillman
Uh,
question.
so I like saying, given direction to say it's a family by family decision. We ask that you put something on your window if you're planning on doing it, but is one thing. I just wonder if the liability, that my big concern there is liability. If we go in and say use tongs or do this with the candy or do that, are we opening up ourselves, similar to George or John, when we, when Orland asked us to sign their petition and our attorney, our insurance company said, you're better off ignoring the rule than publicly coming out against it.
What we would do is, if CDC, that's kind of what we're waiting on, if CDC comes out with any guidelines. If not, then, there's just gonna be follow the CDC guidelines.
And then, yeah, so
I
I
get
mean,
what you're saying. So, yeah, I mean, I just had that in my head. I'm envisioning, like, what am I gonna be doing? But if anyone, it may be simpler just saying to follow our, our social distancing, wear a mask. They really should be wearing gloves if not, but you're right. If we can't, maybe not tell them what to do, but we can definitely give guidelines.
yeah, and I would just follow up with Mike on what the guidelines should be, if anything, other than we're making, it's a personal
Yeah.
decision.
Sure.
And as far as the downtown businesses go, I guess my big concern is just advertising. I think the advertising is a big thing, but if we're looking for crowds to come in, if we get this, that's my concern, is we just turn it into a huge event. But I'm not necessarily opposed to doing it. I guess I ask again, is it sponsored by the village or not sponsored by the village?
Yes, it's a village sponsored event.
I know, but in this case, are we sponsoring it, or do we do the same thing we've been doing with everything else and say, if the downtown wants to do it, they can do it, but it's not the village sponsored? Is that the better way to go?
Yeah, I mean, some of that, I mean, with the car show, I mean, the car show was not a village event, but we did authorize it. So, that's something, when we got the complaints,
What does sponsor bring with it? What does that word bring?
Like, to me, it's basically the person running the event. So we're putting it together. We're deciding what's going to happen at the event. I mean, if it's just strictly go trick or treating downtown on these days, then, somebody's got to get it out, put it together, get the information out to the residents. So to me, that's like us kind of being in charge of that
Yeah.
event.
Well, I don't think calling anything trick or treating means anything. We still have to follow the guidelines of what the amount of gathering is, how many people can be together, what do you have, wearing the mask, all those things are still in play. So, I don't see any difference between calling it trick or treating or not.
I think it's CDC is going to be driving something for October 31st trick or treating. I think if we just follow that.
I would agree with that, John.
So it's
Yeah,
out.
And I don't know how,
for that
I don't know
direct-
how do you tell people village only? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's going to go out to their relatives or their friends and other communities. So, I mean, other than not running an ad that we're paying for, I don't know how you prevent that either.
Are you talking just about trick or treating, or are you talking about Halloween Hoedown?
Well, either.
Halloween.
Anything that is going to bring a group more than what the CDC is recommending, I
Right.
would caution. That's all.
Right. And that is what, I think we're struggling with. And it's kind of having those families going down there, whether, they're just walking to a business, but we are going to get them. I think it could be as simple as putting it on our community calendar, which is where all events go. We've got a Lemonster Days website that's just for Lemonster events, Lemonster Day events. There's also other options. The Park District came up with a trail, just do a trail, walking trail with specific times. that limiting it to 50 kids and a parent or two at that time going through and getting the candy. It's all about the candy. So there's different options, and this one was specifically for the downtown businesses in support of them, which is again kind of what it was for. So it would be, I did not go to any of the car shows, so I know, we heard both positive, negatives. And then I think initially, early on, we were kind of like, we are not probably going to have all these kids running around down in the downtown, but if it can be low key and, if it depends. I mean, there's a number of things that we can do. So if we want to have the trick or treating, the businesses, continuing to give out candy and not do all the other activities, which we can't do, but we could have things along the street, like, the Quarry Queen. There's actually hearse that we can have. That would probably be about it. So.
Yeah, I think, Linda, as of right now, I mean, we're in quote unquote phase 3. We're this is assuming we're not going in, our positivity rates don't go up, it stays below the 8%. I think following any guidelines from the CDC, along with staying below 8%, I think if we somehow manage, to have that day or outing to meet CDC guidelines, then I don't personally have a problem with it. If there's something above and beyond CDC guidelines, I think we got to individually address, those situations and then find out through Mike, how are other towns doing it, right? So we're not the only ones that are going to have this, either public issue or legal issue. So I think maybe we just go from there and because it sounds like CDC has not, did I hear you correctly? CDC has not put anything out yet?
No,
For Halloween, is that correct?
not yet.
And the state hasn't either, right?
No.
So Linda, did you say the safety village component you thought should, or you were asking about doing that or not doing that?
We will not do that. It's too congested in there.
Okay, and then the parade, was that the other one? Sorry, if you said this, I just forgot that.
No, that's okay.
The parade.
I was just saying how it was done. So no, there would not be any parade. On
And
the other
so we're
hand,
just,
still having a costume contest, but again, that's, having a bunch of kids in one area, so that we probably would not even be doing that.
right. I like the idea of the businesses having the ability, and just like the homes, if we have them put some sign up saying they welcome trick-or-treaters or not. I mean,
Okay.
I think spreading it out over a long day, you don't really, I never felt like it was super crowded for those things, and we just say there's no official start or end. I think the parade and the safety village caused congestion, but when you just saw the people walking around, I think it was,
Yeah.
wasn't as bad. So if we did it all day, I think you're just going to get traffic down there, and it's not going to be like the parade.
Okay.
So I guess that's my opinion, but of course, keeping with the CDC and the state requirements.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Thank you. So that kind of takes care of Monster Day and Halloween Hoedown, and then getting into the hometown holiday. It's kind of different. Our thought is we're just going to have the additional. We did budget for additional lighting, and that includes a candy cane lane with kind of ornamental candy shaped things and gingerbread and whatnot down the path that goes from Stevens Street along Front Street to the bridge area. We want kind of that to connect so people kind of still walk around amongst those businesses, maybe get them out of their cars and they can walk on the path and hopefully go into a restaurant. So that, of course, is something, they can go there anytime, but we still have the day of Halloween, of hometown holiday with the tree lighting and all that. So again, we're finding out with Santa if he's what is he willing to do? Maybe he just drives around in a vehicle or something. The Kris Kringle Market people could be out on the street. That could be manageable. It's not so much of a kid event as it is an adult, family event. So that can kind of be spread out and, maybe made a longer time frame. I don't know if we want to do the tree lighting, and because that, hundreds of people again standing in the street all very close together. Maybe we do it that low key. So we do intend to have that still. And, we can figure out the details. But that's definitely something we feel that can continue as well.
That makes sense to me, Linda. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyone else have any issues or questions for Linda on that?
You've been talking to the downtown merchants lately, Linda, have you?
Yes, Jason has been talking to them and getting feedback from them. And we do want to, he's been, doing a great job, as you all know, with connecting with the business owners. And we definitely want to continue to get more of the input from them, because essentially this is for them. And if we can continue to move on and get them more involved and get our communities or our committees more involved, like the Historical Society, and they always have been, but kind of getting more volunteers and putting those groups are more than willing to help with things together, and getting that more than just us, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's not the one-man band, but trying to get a lot of input from the people that are actually down there.
Yeah, ideally they'd be stepping up to the plate, doing the work, and maybe us supporting them rather than
Right.
around.
Yeah. So Jason's definitely heading that in that direction and doing a great job with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, Linda, I'm gonna have to talk to you later too about the Front Street lofts. They want to do more for the event too. I don't know if they were all talking about decorating their balconies the same or whatever they're going to do, but I know Matt wanted to talk to you about that, Giblin. And also, do we even have a place to put the tree anymore, being that Diggs kind of took over that spot?
Jason, do you have an update on that? Because I know they were talking about if they still had room to put it in Budnick Plaza.
I don't have an update, but we're working on it. We'll find a place, right? Always do.
Okay, because I know Jen was saying, they would be able to keep it there and they were going to measure it out and everything. So I don't know if it's decided to be there or not, but there's definitely a lot of other places it can go. It can go. The thing with, I hate to move it away because I like to be able to see it, from the bridge and from Main Street and from Illinois Street when you're coming in that area. Maybe it's just me, but it's like, oh, wow, that would draw you down there if you didn't know it was there. And I heard that from a lot of people. It's like, oh my gosh, well, that's so cool. So, moving it from around that intersection, but it'll be, we'll work it out. But so the answer to that question is we do not have that answer yet. We'll have to follow up.
It's nice to see Budnick Plaza being utilized. I was there, yes, it was Sunday. It was packed. There was people out there, there's music. I know now in December it'll probably be a little colder, so I don't think there'll be many people out there. So it's probably a good location.
Jen is working on getting some outside winter seating arrangements. So there may be hopefully more people.
Good.
And then, well, that is all I have.
Hey, Linda, you said that I think we had it in the budget, but an additional program through Artistic Holidays, and we got to get that approved next week. Is that right?
Yeah, so similar to what we did with last year when we did the initial lighting, we have a 3-year contract for budget purposes. So we added another $20,000 for this year to add more to that. So we'll have a referendum on the agenda item for next Monday's meeting to get that approved, to add that for a 3-year contract. for those additional items. And we want to go down Main Street too. So we do have the light pole ornaments, trying to think what we added down there, but we're hoping to get, more businesses involved, and that's the personal, thing with them, is they want to put the lights in the front and work with Derek directly. But we're hoping to kind of get the entire Main Street lit up to go all the way down towards Gels.
I know last year we had issues with, or didn't have issues with Ralph was talking about manpower getting people hanging these lights. We lucked out last year with the weather, but this year we mightn't be so lucky. So I don't know, we might need, Ralph may need some help from.
Right. We have, we've asked Derek what a cost would be for them to put up any additional items that are not ones we purchased. Randy, the ones we are, if the resolution should be approved, they will immediately be ordered and we'll have them. They got to be shipped from France. So we'll be getting those at the beginning of November. And Randy and the Public Works will start putting those up right away. So if there's Public Works and Artistic Holiday Designs are talking about any extra work for putting those other items up, and will give us a cost on that because it is a lot.
So, hey, just to, Linda, to clarify, last year, Public Works put everything up, right?
Correct.
And as of right now, you're saying it's a gray area. We haven't decided who's putting it up, or we think Public Works is, but.
So we're putting up the items that we're purchasing. I think we have to put them up, but we could at the same time also hire them to put them up. So Public Works is communicating with them on, what that would be. So I wasn't in that conversation. So depending on how many items there are and how much it involves and the manpower, they're going to figure out, okay, this is, what we can handle. What is the cost of if we need your help to do this?
Okay, so sorry, it sounds like we're getting an estimate from them to put it up, and then we're going to decide if we want them to put it up, or
Correct.
we're
Some of
only
it.
asking them to estimate some of it.
You're gonna estimate it, yeah, and of course, depending on the cost, it's gonna, will be yes or no.
And for the budget that we put together, were we putting it together for the fixtures only, or when we did the budget originally, or was it install too?
It was just the fixtures.
Okay. All right. So as of now, the expectation is we do it, and then we're going to see if we can afford to have someone else do it. Is what it
Yes.
sounds like.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the addition that we did approve was for the additional lighting, but now we've added to it, and that's the resolution you're talking about, Linda?
That's correct. So the 2019 was one of 3 years.
Right.
And then, so this will be a brand new one for 2020, starting in 2020 for one.
Why do we need it though, if we approved it for 3 years? Why do we need to do it again?
It's not for the same one. So these are additional.
So these are only additions to what we already approved for 3
Amendment
years.
to the contract.
Right, so it's
Okay.
additional items, Candy Cane Lane, all down Front Street. So we purchased the items that went from the building, one building across the other, the street light crossings. Those we had purchased in this 2021. So we didn't own it last year. So we wanted to make sure we got those because they match everything. And we don't want those going away. So we purchased those and additional lamp pole lights, and then some of the Candy Cane Lane items.
So my only concern is obviously the weather. So, if we run into some inclement weather, in November, it's going to be very difficult for us to obviously put that stuff up. We're gonna start putting our stuff that we bought, Linda. We're gonna put that up for sure, but we might have to tap Artistic, to give us a hand with the new stuff.
Mhm.
So we're working with Derek, as
Yeah.
we get.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Linda. And you're promising a full St. Patrick's Day parade, right, in March? Are you gonna go on record?
I'm not going on record.
Gonna have a vaccine. We're all good to go. All right.
Everyone.
George, don't worry, the Stockyard Kilty Band has been practicing. We will be ready.
All right, Jason will be there.
Are you guys practicing virtually, Jason?
Yeah. Learning new tunes, That's what
Yeah.
George likes to tease me about.
All right, thanks, Linda. Hey, Jason, you want to just give a brief? I know you've been getting pinged by a lot of businesses, and actually people not asking for a handout or anything. They just want to do more stuff, right? So we just want to kind of make sure you're all on the same page. And go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. As Linda mentioned, we did get approached about putting some igloos in Budnick Plaza. Diggs is working on that. They would pay for those, and we'll coordinate with Public Works and with the building owner and find the best location for those, and as well as our decorations and whatnot. We're also getting a couple businesses are looking to secure more outdoor space, or just improve the outdoor space that they have. We allowed Andre a month or two ago to pave that, and I credit to him. He did a great job. It looks really nice. I talked to Cornerstone, met with an architect today about the area where they have the tent now, putting a permanent roof, shed roof similar to what's on the back of the building when they added the ADA ramp in the back, as well as maybe putting a knee wall or something in the front to get rid of to not have to rely on those white like festival fencing. And I also talked to Huey McClafferty's. They're interested in expanding a bit in front of the building, potentially taking the stairs out and just leaving the ramp to get up there. And that would give them some space. So all the business owners I talked to are looking at the winter and worried about how they're going to continue their operation. So those are improvements in the public right away on both of those for both of those business owners. So we kind of wanted to make sure or answer any questions if there's that's something we should continue to pursue. I told Ralph earlier, I'm just a conduit for the business owners here. They ask, and I'm happy to pass that along.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I have a general opinion. When we're looking to approve these things, especially when it becomes permanent, we have to look at it post-COVID as well. And when I say that, I know the sidewalk in front of Stonehouse or Cornerstone now is a wide sidewalk, but when I look at the corner by Huey's, do we want those steps to be permanently gone? Or is there a temporary thing we could do to support the same thing that he's talking about? I'm thinking 3 years down the line when we're no more COVID, do I really want, how wide does my access need to be, I guess? And I'm not singling Huey's, the same thing here at Stonehouse. I look at Diggs, Diggs taking over that space, which I'm fine with, and all the businesses going in the parking lots, but permanent stuff, we've got to want it permanently. We can't just want it for COVID to help them. We should keep it temporary if we just want to be helping them through this crisis that we're in now. That's kind of my generic thought. So when I'm looking at each one of these individually, that's how you're going to be assessing it. Like, is it a good permanent feature or not? That doesn't mean I don't want to necessarily support the business. I would want to, and obviously we've all been helping as much as we can. But a lot of these public places, eventually the park is going to come back, right, to the village. It's not going to be a business sitting in the village park.
Right.
Parking lot spots are going to come back. Sidewalks that are supposed to have these entrances, we can't be blocking the sidewalks off completely to allow for a small ramp. So that's my opinion. I think, like, when I look at, I feel like it's really tight in front of at Stonehouse, if they come in and go permanent all the way out that entire easement, it becomes a really tight sidewalk to go down.
Mhm.
And I feel that way with La Dolce Vita as well, right? The front patio they put in makes a really tight walking spot in that area. So I just want us to consider that. I agree what they did in front of Bottles is nice. They kind of kept the screening there. There's still landscape that's sitting there, and then they put a fence in, but that wasn't a sidewalk in the first place.
Yeah.
That to me is the big difference. But can we block off that with the entrance walk for Huey's instead of building a wall for that entire area? Or can they make it smaller, not have as big of the steps? But I mean, it is an inviting entrance right there to the street. So to completely block off those steps, I think makes it there's not really a sidewalk then anymore.
And I believe we just replaced those steps.
Yeah, I'm happy to report back, and we'll look at some options. Folks are creative these days.
Right. That was my thought. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion.
Jason, I want to ask you something a little off subject. Is the vault going to reopen?
No, it doesn't appear so.
Okay,
Not as the vault, unless somebody else comes and purchases it.
Thank you.
It's a shame. That was a good lunch spot.
Yeah.
On this cornerstone one here, and take away maybe that putting that wall in the front. I don't think Ralph was a fan of that either. They already are blocking off the one section with a fence, and they have the white tents up now. You know, that's essentially permanent outdoor space at this point. You know, it might be worth exploring how to make that look like something a little bit nicer, because that's always going to be outdoor space. So if they want to, when I was talking with the architect, they want to do this photo here is actually, I took a photo from what's in the back. And so it has that exposed timber and limestone, you know, it's well done. They want to kind of upgrade it and then be able to put in heaters and the like there.
Is the landowner doing this, or is it actually the tenant?
The tenant, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ken. I not to interrupt you, Ken, sorry. My point is we have to have some agreement with the owner of the building versus,
for certain. Yeah.
versus the tenant. And, you know, I think, you know, because if these places, you know, whatever, they want to expand or they want to move to somewhere else, they want to buy their own building, you know, then you're stuck with, you know, quote unquote, a permanent structure. That's what the definition of permanent is that it's permanent. So
And
the reason I was asking that, Jason, was that the property that's circled is actually village owned property. And I think we had an agreement with those guys that they utilize the patio, or that side again, what you'd call it, the place that they're extending, that it's a swap for the piece of property in the back. So we're getting parking in the back and they're getting seating in the front. So if this is something that the owner is agreeable with, it would be ideal to make it do a land swap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's possible or not.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, we're getting it, Jason, we're getting it surveyed now. I mean, yeah, you're right. This whole block is, there's a lot of issues like that, you know, and if it is on village property, which it is, but if we wanted to enclose it, or we would have to do an agreement like we did with La Dolce, you know, there's still appears to be enough room around this, but you're right. I think we should clean that up after we get our survey.
Yeah, ideally we'd rather have the parking in the back than this part on the side, obviously.
Okay. Anything else, Jason?
Yeah, well, we also wanted to talk about a potential to bring back or to actually pursue some of the business grants that we had budgeted for. So in the current budget, we do have some grants like we did last year. We made 12 grants last year. None of them exceeded $5,000 at the time, kind of based on how much money was available. Coming into this year, we had folks that were excited, looking forward to making some improvements. I get asked about it quite a bit. And we've just said, we're not spending money. It's in the budget, but we're not spending money right now. We're kind of evaluating where things come in. George and I were also talking about these sorts of situations as well, where people are trying to, pivot their business and get ready for winter in a way that they didn't expect. And we're happy, not so many places closed, but that doesn't mean anybody's really thriving either. And so, the ability to help folks, if we have the ability, that might be something we'd like to explore. Talk to George, talk to Finance Director Chris Smith. Seems like something we could do. Just kind of want to get the temperature there. Too soon, or is this something we could, bring back with a program?
Could we get have Chris at least in one of our next meetings give us a financial overview of where we're at and what we've been. I know we did some budgeting where we estimated being down, and I guess from my perspective, I think it was the right thing for us to put this on hold, but I don't know where we are to budget. So is it possible to do an overview of that, and then we can consider that as part of this request?
Yeah, and Chris has been reaching out to, I know she's here tonight. She's been reaching out to her colleagues to see exactly what sort of COVID-related grants other people are doing. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel or anything. I think we found both New Lenox and Montgomery had nice programs. So we kind of look to mirror some folks that have been successful with it. There you go. Hey, Chris.
Hi. So just on a high level, we anticipated, the two main ones, the retail sales tax and the income tax, actually to be lower. And as you know, with the income tax, April 15th was supposed to be the due date, but then they moved it. So we kind of skipped a different fiscal year. So we received this spike with the income tax this year versus this fiscal year versus last fiscal year. So on income tax, I don't know, it's going to hit when, before unemployment, they still gave them $600. So we were still okay. That I'm a little, but we're actually running very close and a little bit higher than I anticipated on income tax. Retail sales tax, we dipped a little bit, but then we've got 1 month we dipped, and then the other month we went back up. And a lot of them, and I know Jason had said it, and we had said it, a lot, we pulled in Pete's right in December. So we had another grocery store that didn't close. We have the mulch, we have the concrete, all those industries are still going, we're still going strong. So on retail sales tax, we really have not dipped as much as like other communities where they have convention centers. We don't have those. We don't have a lot of big boxes like an IKEA or any of those areas that actually, they had to close. We don't have that. So we weren't effective as hard as the other ones. The other thing I do want to mention too is we did put in for the Cook County. They didn't give us that much, but they did. We put it in for $183,000. What they allotted us, I put in on expenditures, and so are going to be receiving that we can maybe earmark for economic recovery if we want to, or not for these business assistance program. The other is too, is that we still have a little bit more in the fund balance than we anticipated from last year, because we right away cut our costs, right away cut. So we do have some money in there as well that if we tell the rating agencies, you know, we dipped into fund balance because we wanted to help our businesses. So there's a couple of opportunities out there that we could really help them. I can give you a full and the next one, but that is, you know, that's going to be the next cow is in October. And I don't know if you really wanted to maybe more decided on now to have these businesses. And like I said, there's a couple communities where they're waiving fees, other communities where they're giving direct, saying, okay, you know, if you want to build this or build this, here's a grant for this.
So, Chris, thanks for the update. And I think, yeah, maybe, you know, a more thorough update in October, like where are we just, you know, revenues according to budget by income tax, by sales tax. Sounds like we're not as far off as we thought we'd be, but just would like to know, you know, maybe a better update. But between now and then, Jason, what from a timing standpoint would you be looking for direction for until we get that update?
I don't have anything in mind, honestly. Like Chris said, it'll start getting colder sooner. But you know, we have a form, we have a process. We are going to improve the process a little bit, Chris. I'll do a little better this time. Mary, we've talked about making sure, you know, there's a timeliness to it. You know, we had a successful grant program last year, so you know, we could roll it out again.
Hey, Jason,
pretty
just so we have a better picture of everything, and I think that's a good high level on the financial side. And could we do put out a call for projects and then, you know, have that conversation side by side, the finance one in October, and maybe approve some incentives in October and be off to the races?
Yeah, Chris, we sent out the ratings book, right, George?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that where we're at now is in there. Yeah, Chris?
I'm just wondering from a call for projects, so we know what type of demand we have for a program. It'd be good to know. I mean, I've seen other towns where they put something out and everyone applies, and you know, maybe we can get more information so we know what we're talking about on a number. I'm talking on the expenses.
I have one item to add here, just not to be the downer guy here, but construction starts are moving down now, even though construction is an exempt activity. I forget what the official term was there, but what's happening now is the building trades are coming down. So I only bring that up as it relates to the concrete suppliers in town. Obviously, maybe mulch sales are up more because people we're putting things into their yard. But what my point is, we need to make sure we're dealing in real time and not projecting on anticipations. So as we evaluate where we're at monetarily, let's look at what we can count and what we can have our hands on and go from there, because things may still change. MFT funds were down again, George. For the total, they're not down anywhere near as drastically as I thought. That was in the last that IML report that came out, but they still are down about 15%. So just letting you know, there are communities that are cutting on their public works side, on projects and overall construction. This is more related to Chicago. Again, I see Phil there, and he's still waiting. I'm counting on those types of projects to continue in Lamar. So, you know, maybe we can help our suppliers here locally.
Yeah, Rick, to that point, I'm definitely, you know, I have my eye on single family units. It's something we report to the board monthly.
Right.
We've had an outstanding year for permits, but agree, we're seeing a slower year for new homes, certainly.
I'm out for doing whatever we can. I'm just saying we need to be realistic. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, agreed.
Chris, I have a question for you about the internet sales tax. Are we getting any of that?
Okay, the internet sales tax, I believe that's going to start in January. In January, it's going to be the full-fledged where it's the internet where we would receive that portion of it. So our local use tax is still high, but that will come down a little bit because that's from the state, that's a per capita, and then we'll receive more in the retail sales. But we have not received that will be coming in January.
A couple of times I bought from Amazon and they charged me a full 10% sales tax, which is not what they're supposed to do.
Unless they have a presence in Lamont or a presence in Illinois. I think that's it was in stages. So we'd have to look at that at what you bought if they have a presence here in Illinois.
And what I've heard is if they sell something from a third party, there is no sales tax. But through Amazon, they charge sales tax.
Yes, it will. That will change. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I want to add quickly, because Attorney Mike Stillman asked me to put this out there. I mentioned it to Chris earlier. He is working with individual business owners. If you live in my neck of the woods, you'll know 115 Bourbon Street. You've been to countless fundraisers there. They're doing, Chris, you have to help me with the nomenclature, but they're volunteering a 1% sales tax for their business. And it's being reimbursed from their village back to the business, and it's being used to cover the cost of heaters and other outdoor improvements. So that's a business owner saying, we'll take an extra 1% if we could use that to pay for some improvements. So Mike wanted me to share that, kind of a unique way to help support if you're a sales tax creator.
And I do want to
qualify even without being the home rule. Can we do that?
Yes, he made sure to tell me that, yes, we could do that as non-home rule.
Yes, and that I do have to say, this is Chris, I do have to say, though, that it would have to be collected from us and then rebated back to them. So it's basically, we would have to create the forms, collect the tax, and then, so it's administrative.
It's not the first option, but it's an option, right, Chris?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Jason. All right. So it sounds like you have enough direction from us, right? The items on the permanent structures with the restaurants, that is a little bit more involved. We need more detail, and the landlord would have to be, first of all, involved in that if we were to move forward or contemplate a permanent structure, at least the ones you regarded. So,
yeah.
All right. So why don't we leapfrog? Phil, looks like you're on. I think Cole is as well. Why don't we leapfrog to the Riley's Metal additional discussion, considering I don't think anyone's on for Marble Landings. We'll do that last. Who's taking this one? Is this you, George?
Mark Herman.
Hello.
Hi. There you go.
Evening. So as you're all aware, last month we had at our committee of the whole in August, lengthy discussion with the project as a whole, the zoning items, etc. We have this on the agenda tonight, not to rehash that, but rather we've been working with the village attorney's office and the applicant on putting together the annexation agreement that would be necessary for this project. And just wanted to just kind of share a few items with that, and specifically one item that we think we need some direction from the board on from as a policy direction. So that item first would be that the annexation contains an exhibit, which is the cash contribution schedule. So this relates to the land cash fees that any new development has to pay. In general, these go to the school districts, the park districts, the fire district, etc. All of those fees are to code, except for there is a public safety contribution, which does go to the village of $1,000 per dwelling unit. And the applicant is requesting to have that fee waived. They're making it because there's some additional infrastructure stormwater related items that I'll let them further, describe. But these two stormwater additional improvements that they are making, kind of above and beyond, they're sort of things that probably should have been properly taken care of with neighboring development that they're sort of stuck holding the bag on. So that's the first item, the main item here tonight. Policy direction from the board as to if you're comfortable waiving that public safety contribution fee. And then again, just kind of a few other things, since they're kind of related to some things that do come up. Just with this one, I know, with like Timber Run recently, we've had these discussions about, if another entity is going to get involved. So this annexation agreement does have a provision in there. The developer can assign a development if at some point something happens and they need to do that. But we put some language in there that the village does have the right to sort of make sure, to reasonably deny that. So in essence, the village needs to make sure just that if it were to be assigned, it would be assigned to a reputable, a competent developer with experience in that type of a product. So that way we know that we're going to get a good product in that event. Additionally, the annexation agreement, again, if something were to happen and this development does not occur right away, in this case, it just makes it clear that the R5 zoning does remain in place. But again, between the potential plan unit development ordinance and a annexation agreement, a developer would have to build this development. If someone were to come in to propose some sort of alternative, they would need to amend those items. And then just real quickly, there is a dormant SSA in place. So if there's some reason the HOA is not able to properly maintain their common areas and stormwater detention facilities, et cetera, there would be that provision where SSA could be activated so that the village could then do that work, but then recoup those costs. So as noted, Phil Cullen, the developers here. Phil, do you want to elaborate on anything?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, no, you'll go back in what you were just talking about, Rick, was this essential services for construction. I think everything should be okay by the spring. The thing I'm more concerned about is the price of lumber doubling. Now, it came down about 20% last week when the market tanked on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But we've got a long ways to go to get Canadian lumber back in this country. And that's all your structural lumber, all your floor joists, all your roof rafters. And so that was why I was talking to my attorney and said, hey, we better put some protections in here. Hopefully everything goes well, but you just protect yourself that, this could get delayed for a year if this COVID picks up and you see what's going on in Europe today with all the spikes, and we don't know what we're in for the next 6 months yet. So that was the reason for the annexation, the modifications to the language of the annexation agreement. I had talked to Jim Kankar and Ralph was aware. I had talked to George Schaefer a while back when they did this Asbury Woods West. There was some uncontrolled runoff water that came around from the west side of the property. It was a common lot line between Stonehenge condominiums and Asbury Woods West. And there was some uncontrolled runoff coming off that parking lot for Stonehenge that was put into a catch basin, and then they rerouted it to the back corner of the townhomes along facing north on Asbury Drive West, right by the West Stub Street. Well, I had been talking to most of the neighbors out there that are adjacent to the property, and the lady by the name of Nancy Melvin had been talking to Jim Kankar because there's an unrestricted flow that comes out into a flared end section in her backyard, and it pretty much puddles there. And as the conversations I had with the 3 people that lived in that building, their sump pumps are continually running because the backyard and the side yard gets a lot of water that right now, unless it comes up to a certain level, it doesn't leave the site. We had originally planned on taking that water and bringing it into our pond and just letting it flow through the pond. We weren't going to increase the storage and the size of the detention area, but we were going to bypass and bring that water and bypass it through the pond. We had a teleconference meeting with the MWRD, and they didn't like that idea. They want this flared end section taken off the back of that property and put a manhole in, and we have to run 615 feet to tie it into a storm sewer that runs along the south side of 127th Street. And that's the best way, that is the best way to correct this. So there was a situation that, I had talked to Jim Kankar, and he said, this was 10 years ago. That's what the MWRD wanted, and that's why it was approved the same way. Or it was approved the way it was, and now 10 years later, they're saying, no, we don't like it, put it into a pipe. So that's why I was looking for some help on those impact fees.
So, Mayor, I spoke with Phil this morning, and I don't think the request is out of line. He is correct. He's going to be taking that water and taking care of that issue over there. It's going to help. It's going to help the new development. It's also going to help the people in Ashbury as well as Stonehenge. So I don't think his request is out of line. That's my opinion, sir.
Thanks, Ralph. And again, I just don't want to set a precedent of every developer that comes in, trying to quote unquote, not have to pay this fee, but it sounds like this fee is already being paid for by the developer in another form and what the work they're doing. Is that fair to say, Ralph?
It is. It is. The cost of that sewer, I believe Phil had sent that to George. It is. It's a fair trade-off.
And I thought if we Mark would be able to put it in the agreement, or our attorney, very clearly the reason why there's the fee not being paid, so we don't have that issue going forward where everyone's asking for it.
Phil, when are you looking at breaking ground?
Well, what we're looking for is, we're going to be back here very shortly with some final engineering if it's approved next week. So we are basically want to come out of ground this spring. It depends what happens with the weather, Mayor. And if the weather stays fairly decent and it doesn't get too cold, it may be over the winter months. But like I said, our biggest thing right now is just watching these lumber prices. And I don't know, I think across the board, from what I hear from the Southwest Suburban Builders Association, sales have slowed down. And it's basically because what a lumber for a 3,000 square foot house that cost 25 grand, right now is costing, a year ago was costing $40,000. So it is putting some pressure on people. Yeah, there's a lot of builders that have people interested in building, but they're not putting foundations in until they get some resolution on what's going to go on with these lumber prices. Typically the homeowners don't want to eat that type of an increase, a $15,000 increase. So, but we're moving forward.
Would you have a problem if the board was in agreement to have some sort of expiration on this?
Well, I think we do.
So is it?
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the annexation agreements are valid for 20 years. Was the question about maybe specifically with the public safety fee waiver, a lower duration?
Yeah. Like, hey, let's get this thing rolling. Let's get moving. If you break ground next year, you get it. If it's, or whatever, some sort of shorter time frame, Phil. And I'm not talking 20 to 19. I'm talking like, 18 months to break ground.
Oh, yeah, well, you know what? And we could go along with that. I mean, I guess the question is, they say, hey, nobody's got the crystal ball to know what's going to happen in the next year or two. So I'm confident things are going to get better, not worse. But I've been wrong before, so I mean, we could, if you were comfortable putting it in to start within 2 years, that's fine.
All right. Anyone else on the board have any questions or issues with what Phil's asking?
I have one question, and I don't know if Phil or Ralph maybe has the answer. When you talk to Jim, the sewer that you're gonna tie into on the south side of 127th Street, I'm gonna make the assumption that that would all has been evaluated now with this change to bring that water in, that it is sufficient. So we don't end up with some problem with Cook County and puddling out on 127th Street.
No, you know what, we've actually, we did a lot of work, Rick, for, you know, pretty much our final engineering as far as stormwater management has been completed. Because there
Okay,
was some issues about, you know, it is sized to handle this water.
Okay, and Mayor, to your point about the time, I'm gonna ask again, this work would be done early on when the underground work is going in. Is that correct, Phil? This would not
Sure.
wait until this would happen as you develop the property, potentially completely before you would break ground.
Well, I think what happened, you know, this is part of the stormwater management. It's got to go in quickly, you know, and that was the situation because that site has to come up a couple feet. I mean, when they did the Asbury Woods West and they did that Prairie Lane, and that's why all those scrub trees are coming out. So to keep that thing, because it gets wet when it rains, because when that water is coming out from that flared end section, after it puddles right behind Nancy Melvin's house, once it reaches a level, it does come over onto Riley's meadow.
It's
You know.
actually working as a small retention area is what's happening. That's why it's puddling. So
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and they've actually got a manhole there, and they've got their sump pump discharge into it, which is putting a lot of head pressure on their pumping system. And I think that's one of the big problems they have. That she claims every time it rains, her pump runs for 2 weeks.
Well, my question is more about the timing of this particular work would be early on in the development.
Oh, yeah. When the sewer and water
So-
guys here, when the sewer and water services are going in, the storm line's going in.
So
in the storm line is a 15-inch line, Rick. We're gonna pull the flared end section off. We've got a 15-inch RCP that's going from the back of the townhome all the way out to 127th Street. There's 3 manholes. That'll be one of the first things we install to make sure the site drains and we don't get flooded out.
And I'm bringing this up, Mayor, more for the security of this work will be done, whether, you know, he advances quickly with building out buildings or not, this work will be done. And this is a remedy for a problem already there. That's kind of where I was headed, so.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's, you know, in that way, it also is, you know, goodwill and it helps out the residents surrounding there.
That's what I'm getting at. We're solving a problem over there early on.
I like it. So, and that's maybe where we have a time frame on it, Phil, where that work gets done in X amount of months. If you're, you know, let's find a time frame, something within potentially you know, we're not going to get it done probably within the next rain season by next May, but I would prefer something before May of 2022.
Okay, oh, that works for me.
Anyone else have any other issues on this?
I just have a clarification question. You were talking about some of the criteria that was different than Timber Run. I wasn't following all the stuff you said. I guess I'll ask a general question. Why are we making it different? Why wouldn't we keep it the same as Timber Run?
The thing that I brought up with Timber Run actually is because we did actually put the assignment provision in the Timber Run development agreement. I'm not aware of previous annexation agreements or development agreements that the village has had previous to Timber Run that have had the assignability language.
Right.
And I brought up Timber Run actually because this language is similar to the Timber Run development agreement language where the village does have. The only difference is the Timber Run agreements, the applicant Phil and Cole were asking, very good questions about process wise. So we just kind of clarified the process in terms of, the village having a certain number of days in order to do this, whereas the Timber Run development agreement was vague about that.
Right. I thought Timber Run though was they had to go to, if it was sold, it had to go to board approval to allow them to do the approved PUD or something to that extent. And I thought you said on this one, it's
the language that was agreed upon with Taylor Morrison at the time was if they were to assign the development to another developer, that the village board does have to approve that within reason. There's, reasonably approved type of language. And again, it's the same language in terms of, a developer who's experienced and competent, proficient with that type of product. And the village cannot unreasonably deny it. It is the same language, more or less, as the Timber Run development agreement.
okay. But I thought the Timber Run was they had to go to the board for approval.
Yes, again, so if Phil were to be approved, but then assign the development rights for Riley Meadows to another developer, it would have to come to the board to be approved.
Okay, and that's the language that you're saying you're put in here.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just was trying, that's what I was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
For
Okay,
us to
thank you.
evaluate the competency of the new developer.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, we're heading up on 2 hours. Anything else on this topic? All right. All right, well, I shouldn't say last but not least, but at least of the 4 discussion items, Marble Landings,
I'll jump in
access
here.
discussion, who's taking this?
I'll jump in. I might need Mark's help, but we wanted to bring this to the board. Hearts, as you know, Holmes is the developer for Marble Landing, and they've been having a lot of difficulty getting approval for the Archer Avenue access from IDOT. It's one of a couple items that have slowed down that subdivision. And so I guess this sometime this spring, I included the letter from IDOT in the package. IDOT's geometrics unit, who looks at turn radius and sight distance and the rest, effectively said to Harts, you can't access Archer, and would only consider an emergency access that was gated. When we heard about this, we told Harts, that's totally unacceptable. Doesn't make even any sense to us, even why this would be so. And ask them to go back and work with their traffic engineers to respond, but that we wouldn't be accepting that restriction from IDOT. So they've developed a new plan that shows a deceleration lane for the entrance off of Archer. The location of the subdivision, IDOT has said, there's sort of a bend in Archer over there to the east. And so for travelers going southwest down Archer, which I believe is probably 50 miles an hour there wasn't enough sight distance to enter and exit the subdivision. So by putting in a deceleration lane, they would be able to get, the vehicle would be able to get off the roadway, decelerate, and enter the subdivision. So those drawings are done. And then we also received a petition from neighbors at Christina Crossing, also asking, encouraging IDOT to consider allowing an entrance and exit onto Archer from Marble Landings. Obviously, we concur. We want the same thing. And so Harts had asked that we prepare a letter for them to submit to IDOT to show our support for the revisions there. So that letter is also in the packet. It does say the village would consider a resolution about traffic safety or something along those lines should it be necessary. So wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. And before we signed any letter, had an opportunity to look at what's going on over there and understand what's happening. Did I miss anything, Mark? I don't think so. I think that's about where we're at.
This is Ron. I've got one question. Are they talking about full access or just a right in, right out?
IDOT wants to, again, IDOT wanted no access. Hertz is saying, how about you consider right in only? We would like to tell IDOT you should consider right in and right out.
Okay.
So Jason, are you saying the letter we're going to submit is for right in and right out, or are we saying that we support the right in only? An emergency right out.
For us is the right in only, and that's the one that's in the packet.
Okay.
But we'll change that up to say right out, exit as well. And the petition, the neighborhood petition asked for the same.
Okay, so sorry. So if we're saying right in and right out and we're changing the letter, then that sounds reasonable to me.
Very good.
Yeah, I'd like right in, right out. Obviously, that will include turn lane for each of those, correct?
Yeah, when I did discuss it with village engineer Jim Kankar, and he's in support as well. He thinks that we should go back to IDOT with some revisions. He did caution me that there is some grade changes for the right out that could make a deceleration lane, or I guess that would be an acceleration lane, difficult. But I still think that should be investigated. It has to be.
Yeah.
No, I like it. Definitely try and get both, and it'd be great for not only the new development, but obviously for the current homeowners in that area as well. And appreciate them putting together that petition, and we appreciate their support on this. Definitely, we would like to pursue this and get this achieved. I still don't understand why IDOT would not approve it, because if this was not part of the village, I still don't understand if, let's say this was unincorporated and you had just a bunch of unincorporated houses that wanted access just for their personal residence, could IDOT potentially have to allow those? And if that's the case, maybe that's something we take back to IDOT and say, hey, you know what? This could jeopardize this development. If you jeopardize the development, it could go back into, unincorporated, and you're going to have maybe 4 or 5 houses there. I don't know. I don't know what that specific, what it would allow, but I think that's maybe one argument we take up with them. Again, uncertain if and how they could eliminate any type of access to a private landowner, even if it was in the township.
And lower the speed limit, John. 45 miles an hour further west going into Lockport. You got driveways all over the place, including commercials.
Yeah, because it coming out of going southbound, it is 45 once you get near CVS, or maybe, right. And then it picks back up to 50.
Right.
Maybe
I'm just saying, at a bare minimum, they could do that. This is a ridiculous statement what they're talking about. I get it because of the vision, but like you said, there's driveways there now where individual cars pull out, and it's in the 50-mile zone.
Does this property have an existing curb cut that's approved?
Yeah.
Onto Archer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And how many people signed that petition?
Mark, grab a quick look, but it was a few pages. I think one of the residents is here today. I know the resident that started it wasn't available, but we assured him that we would pass along that information. But it was nice to see. Yeah, there's certainly this property is kind of just to the west of that APC trucking. That must be a home-based business. So yeah, there's definitely access there now. There, in that you could kind of see the bend that IDOT was talking about. But you're correct, Rick. If they look at other things such as reducing the speed limit, then the sight distances become shorter.
Mhm.
If I could just jump in then, just quick, not an exact count, but just kind of eyeballing based on the number of pages and how many are on a page, it's over 100 signatures.
Awesome. Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
No, that's good. And I mean, let's face it, you get pretty close to the light at, 131st. So reducing the speed limit it's not going to impact motorists. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think their concern was traffic heading eastbound. It was the traffic coming, from the west or from the southwest there.
But if you're coming from the west, there is no issue because you
No,
can't.
you're traveling west if they're coming from right to left on the screen.
Yeah, my point is having a speed limit reduction farther east for westbound traffic or southwestbound traffic.
Yep.
Because my point is you're coming to a light, just down the road anyway. So
yeah.
Anyway, I this is too logical. We're dealing with the state of Illinois, so.
We could take
This
that
isn't the
to
craziest
Senator
thing I've heard
Kern.
from IDOT, and I'm sure Phil and Rick have even crazier stories. So
We can take it to Kern. He's on the transportation committee and just tell him this is one of the things we need to get out of the way.
okay.
They must have changed the guard is all I can say.
I mean,
No, Rick, I'm pretty sure you know who this is coming from.
I just don't understand that it's coming up so late in the game. Also, that's another issue I got. But
All right. Thanks, everybody.
thanks. Okay.
Push.
And I'm sorry, was there a resident on that wanted to potentially speak on this? We're coming to our audience participation, George, but you see that resident?
Let me just double check here. I don't see any hands up. What do you know who it was, Jason?
I don't, can anybody hear me?
There we go.
Yeah,
That's
there we
Matt,
go.
right?
I didn't know if our music would work. No, this is Matt Holland at 1311 Christina Place. Myself and my neighbor, Tim Grochinski, put that petition together and just got it out throughout the neighborhood. But no, we appreciate, we contacted Hearts. I talked to the engineer involved with it as well. Didn't think it was going to be an issue. I felt like we were all pretty much on the same page. I actually just found out going down and talking with Mark Herman, actually inquiring about something else. And that's when I found out that the entrance, exit, whatever you want to call it, off of Archer was changed from, what is it, a couple of years ago, I think, at the planning committee or commission meeting or whatever it was. And so we were surprised by that. So I let people in the neighborhood know because, quite honestly, we have a 25 house subdivision off 127th, one way or really two ways in. And, I think we have 60 some kids in this neighborhood. So that increased traffic would be pretty rough for us.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Good job with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks a lot for putting that together. Getting 100 signatures takes more than a good amount of time. So appreciate your time and energy in putting that together. And obviously,
Facebook can be utilized for good things too.
Oh my God.
Well, thanks again. And obviously we fully support it and we'll do the best we can. And we can't speak for IDOT.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it and all your help.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Okay, George, or any other new business? Any of the trustees?
No, I'll just make quick mention. Next week, we have a board meeting Monday. Couple things on the agenda. We'll probably try to turn around the TriCentral Lease and IGA, but also Riley's Point. We are inviting Anthony McConnell, Dr. Anthony McConnell from School District 113A, new superintendent. He's going to be on with us virtually at least. And just to give an update of what's happening at 113A, they're sending students back to some extent here soon and just give an overall introduction. And then he's also going to talk a little bit about their referendum they have coming up. So if you have any questions you want him to cover or anything else, you can shoot it to me and I'll shoot it over to him, but we'll have him under the mayor's report on Monday. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, George. Okay, audience participation, George, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I think if anybody has anything else, there's not many online right now, but you can use your raise your hand feature and I'll call you up. Big Phil, Matt already spoke, Phil already spoke. Nope, I got nothing. Cole, anything, Cole? No. All right, I think we're getting to the end of the meeting. We're all good, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great. Well, again, thanks a lot for hanging in there. 2 hours, 15 minutes. No executive session.
Nope.
Everyone have a great week. With that being said, we will be adjourning tonight's meeting. It's call it 8:45. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it.